Hi everyone, and welcome to Insightly's Workflow Automation webinar. My name is Alyssa Andrade and I am a Customer Success Specialist here at Insightly. Let's take a look at today's agenda. First, I'm going to be talking about what exactly workflow automation is and what the benefits are for you and your team. Then I'll dive into the difference between workflows and a feature you're probably familiar with, which is called pipelines. Then we'll look at the overview picture of how to set up and configure workflows. I'll demo this inside of Insightly itself and show some use cases. And then we'll end with a recap in which I'll go ahead and pinpoint the really important key takeaways for you. Lastly, I'll make sure to provide some additional resources so that you can get Insightly's workflow automation up and running. Now, before we get started, I did want to take a second to point out who these features are available to. So right now, workflow automation is configurable on the professional and enterprise plans. So if you take a look here, you can see that not only is workflow automation available for professional and enterprise, but other huge and key features as well, such as advanced permissions and lead assignment rules. So once this is up and running on your account, everything would be configured by an admin. So next, let's look at what is workflow automation. So workflow automation is basically a set of predefined actions that are executed when specific criteria is met. So you can think about workflow automation as something that is fulfilling if-then statements, such as if an opportunity with $10,000 or more is marked as won, then send an email to the VP of Sales. Or if a lead has a status as not contacted, automatically send an email to the lead. So think about it in the sense of triggers and actions. So here on the left-hand side of the page is the criteria that Insightly would go ahead and evaluate, and then on the right-hand side are the actual actions that are getting triggered off. So by automating these types of repetitive and time-consuming tasks, you're really saving you and yourself, your team, a lot more time, and there's a lot more time available to perform the more important tasks. All right, now let's look at the difference between workflows and pipelines. So I wanted to take a moment to compare these two because I think that it's really important to understand the value of both of these features. So pipelines, for those who are unfamiliar with the feature, typically act as a linear set of stages to document some sort of a process. So it could be a sales process, it could be a project management process, whatever you've configured. And basically each stage of your pipeline is configured to auto-populate tasks or events. But that's really the extent of the automation here. Now, with workflow automation, on the other hand, you can actually have triggered emails sent out, you can auto-create and assign tasks, you can change the record values for any type of record based on specific criteria. So there's really a lot more that you can do. So on a broad level, workflow automation is particularly helpful because you can use it with tasks, contacts, organizations, leads, opportunities, and projects. So that's compared to pipelines, which is in particular available only in opportunities and projects. So you can see side-by-side comparisons of the available actions. So again, what kind of triggers could be sent? What type of record types these particular features depend on? And a little bit, again, a quick recap with the subscription plan availability. So now let's take a basic look at an overview of the setup and configuration of workflow automation. So we'll go more in depth on how to set everything up during the demo, but I basically want to paint the picture here of what you're going to be doing with workflow automation. So if you look at the diagram, the sequence of steps basically goes from outside in. So starting with the outermost layer, process, here's where you're going to determine what types of records Insightly should be evaluating. So in other words, what records do you want Insightly to monitor for specific workflow? Going inside one, you'll see criteria. Criteria allows you to determine what specific information Insightly needs to look out for. So here in this example, it's saying that the process has chosen contacts as the designated record type, and that the criteria is saying specifically that this workflow will work with contacts that have a London address. So next is triggers. Here you're going to be configuring when you want an action to take place, whether it's immediately or in a couple of days. The last step is specifically what you want Insightly to do for you. So do you want it to send an email? Do you want to create a task? We'll basically talk through all 4 of those steps during the demo now. All right, so let's hop on over to the demo here. So basically for the purpose of today's demo, I'm going to be creating a workflow for all of you. And this workflow is going to send an email to a new lead when they're created in Insightly, and it's going to send an email to the lead, as well as sending an email to the user responsible for that lead to notify them that they have a new lead that's been assigned to them. So this is great, especially if you're using some sort of a web to lead form and prospects are entering their information online. Then that information is automatically creating a lead for you in Insightly, and the workflow is taking place to trigger that welcome or interest email and also that notification. So we're going to go ahead and go over to your profile icon on the top right-hand side of the screen, and then we're going to drop down to System Settings. So again, only admins are going to have access to system settings, and you need to make sure that you have the correct plan in order to appropriately go ahead and utilize workflow automation. So here on the left-hand side, I'm actually going to go into workflow processes here. Now, in order to set up a new workflow, you're going to go ahead and press the blue New Workflow Process button. So the first thing you're going to want to do, as mentioned in my previous slides, is to basically create what we call the process. So again, the process is where you're going to choose what type of record that this workflow will work with. So I'm going to give my process a name, and it's just going to go ahead and say New Lead Process. And it's going to do a brief description. This description doesn't have to be anything too long. It's going to basically outline your criteria and the automated actions. So this is in no means required, but it's going to help add some clarification for any admin who's reviewing all of the different workflows that have been set up. So for the description, I'm going to go ahead and say, for new leads, auto send lead and email, and send internal notification. So short and sweet, very easy. If somebody were to read that, they would know exactly what this workflow is going to be doing for them. All right, so now let's go ahead and go into record type. So record type is, as it states in the name, where you're actually going to choose from a drop-down of options on what type of record this workflow would be working with. So in our case, since we're sticking with leads, let's go ahead and select that. Now I'm going to uncheck this active checkbox for right now, and when we're done setting everything up, I'm going to come back and activate it. Next step is to choose when Insightly is going to be scanning and evaluating your records to see if there is matching criteria. So there's 3 different options here. I would say that the first and third are the most commonly used based on how workflows work, but let's go ahead and go through all 3. So this first one, when a record is created. So if at the time a record is created, in this case, in our demo, the lead, if the record is created and the criteria that I'm going to set up is true according to Insightly as it's evaluating, then the actions that I've also set up will get executed. So in our case, this means that if when I create a new lead, the lead status is equal to not contacted, then an email will get sent. So that works out perfectly for our scenario. The other two options would be appropriate for a couple other use cases. So if I go ahead and would select this second one, this is telling me that Insightly is going to evaluate for matching criteria when a record is created and every time it is edited. Meaning Insightly is triggered to check the record when it's created or every time it's updated. And the workflow is going to process the actions consistently every single time that the criteria is met. So this is valuable, I'd say, in more of a values field, meaning if you wanted to receive an email every time an opportunity value for an opportunity is edited, and you wanted to receive an email every time, let's say the opportunity value goes over 100, and this opportunity value is going from 100 to 200 to 500 based on added, let's say, seats that they were having. This would be the perfect criteria here to use. The last option here is going to be when a record is created or on the first edit that meets the criteria. So here Insightly will check if the criteria is met when the record is created, and it's going to trigger the workflow. And if it's not met, it's going to continue to check each time the record is edited. But basically, once the workflow is triggered, Insightly is not going to look back at it again. So basically, the workflow gets put into a bucket and it's not going to be checked anymore. So an example here would be if I wanted to receive an email when the opportunity reaches over $100, if when I created the opportunity the value was 50, I wouldn't receive an email because the criteria is not true. But if someone edited the opportunity and entered $200, then the workflow would be triggered and I'd receive that notification email. So for our demo today, as I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and choose the once when the record is created option here because I specifically want to get a notification when the new lead is created. So let's go ahead and press save. So next what you're going to want to do is add what we call criteria. So you've been hearing me mention criteria a lot. So these are the rules that Insightly will evaluate your records against. So you can have multiple criteria for each workflow. For now, I'll just go ahead and set up one. So I'll press this Add Criteria button. And I'll give my criteria a name. I'm just going to keep it really short and sweet. I'm just going to say that this is regarding a new lead that hasn't been contacted. So I'm just going to put new lead here. So now we're going to select the field and an operator and then enter the value for the criteria that will trigger the process. So if I want to specifically receive an email every time a new lead is entered into Insightly and marked as not contacted, and I also want a triggered email to go out to the lead, I need to make sure that the evaluation criteria says that the lead status is equal to not contacted. So if that marks is true, the lead's going to receive that email, and so is the user responsible. So I'm going to go ahead and press save. Now, if there's more than one part to triggering your rule, you can actually go back, let me go into edit, and you can add another filter. So if I were to do this, I would then have the option of using and or. So you would basically use and to narrow the number of matching records and use or to broaden the list. So if I wanted to specifically have an email sent out when the lead status equals to not contacted, and let's say they were living in a specific city, I can go ahead and adjust this criteria to say this specific information. If I were to choose or, that would mean that either one of these options could be true in order for this criteria to be met and actions to be triggered. Using the and specifically means that both of these filters have to be true. So again, that's why this is more inclusive, and then this is more broad. So I'm going to remove that for right now and then go ahead and press Save Criteria. Now that we have a list of criteria, what we're going to want to do is go ahead and add an action. So at this point, you've already told Insightly what kind of records you want to keep an eye on, or you want it to keep an eye on, and when to match them. Now you're going to define the actions Insightly should take when the record matches your criteria and when these actions should occur. So there's this bucket down here called immediate actions. So if I need an action to be performed immediately when the criteria is met, I'm going to use the actions dropdown on the right hand side, and I'm going to see a couple of different options. These are the actions that I can choose from. For us, I'm going to go ahead and choose Send Email. Because I want this email to be sent to the lead, I'm going to go ahead and give this quick email alert a name. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is the lead prospect email. This is just so that it's really easy to recognize what this workflow action is. You can already see it's predefined as this email is going to be related to the new lead. It's going to come from whoever is assigned to the lead. So if when the lead was created, I was the one that personally created that lead, or maybe it was my boss who did that, it's still going to look like I, being the user responsible, is the one who sent out this follow-up email to the lead. So you do have a couple of other options. You can specify particular users in your account. You can choose the user responsible or that particular record owner or creator. Now in this to spot is going to be really important, because if you want it to get sent out to the lead, you need to make sure you choose email address for the lead. Now, if you had any templates, you would have a list of templates to choose from. Those are quite optional if you want to go ahead and utilize those for workflow automation. Email templates are configured here in the email section of Insightly. And then you're going to go ahead and add the subject. So keeping this short and sweet, I'm just going to go ahead and say Insightly for small businesses. And I'm going to go ahead and type in a little bit of a message so that everybody would have that info. So I'm going to make sure that this email is personalized by going ahead and pressing this Insert Fields button for first name. So what that does is when the lead receives this email, it's actually going to have their first name, looking like I took the time to personalize the email. So that's a huge time saver there. It's auto-generating this, and they're getting that personal touch. So again, that was entered by pressing this Insert Fields button and selecting first name. And now I'll go ahead and say some more information, just saying glad you're interested in learning more about Insightly, and then I'll say cheers, and this will be coming from me. So if I didn't necessarily want this to be coming from, if I wanted to specifically not put any information here, I can go ahead and say Insightly team and press Save Email. So now we've created the process. We chose that we want to work with leads and that we want our leads to be evaluated when they're created. We said that the lead status has to equal to not contacted in order for this action to be triggered, and the immediate action that we chose was to send the lead a prospect email. So let's say that there was a lead that came from an online form and directly went into Insightly. I want to definitely be notified about that new lead, so I need to make sure that I set up one more action, which is sending an email to whoever is responsible for that lead. So again, just like we did with the prospect email, we'll go ahead and create an email alert name. So I'm just going to say user responsible, notification, email number 1. It's going to be coming, let's say it's coming from my direct boss. I'll go ahead and say Melissa here. It's going to be going to whoever is responsible for the lead. Again, you have the option of using email templates here. And then in the email subject section, it's just going to say something like alert, new lead. Now here, I'm going to say, hi, a new lead has been assigned to you. And if I go ahead and put a comma and I put that first and last name here again, what's going to be helpful is that when I receive this notification email, it's actually going to tell me what the name of the lead is. So I can also say at and say organization. So if this is Bill Smith and he works at Crystal Springs Inc., I'd be able to see, hi, a new lead has been assigned to you, Bill Smith at Crystal Springs Inc. So I'm going to go ahead and say, please follow up with them. And then go ahead and press save here. So what's great about sending emails and having them auto-triggered through workflow automation is that these do not count towards your mass email sending limits. So if you can send 500 emails a day and workflow automation sends 200, you still have 500 to send manually. So they will be saved as records into Insightly. So it'll count towards your record limit because we want to make sure that this history of communication is accurately depicted and documented here in Insightly. But again, it's not going to count towards your mass email spending limit, so that's a huge plus there. So one other thing I wanted to point out here is adding a time trigger. So you can set up a time trigger, which is used to choose a time when specific actions will occur. So this is basically going to set up a delayed action. So for this example, I want to say that within 5 days, if the lead status is still equaling to not contacted, I want to make sure that the user responsible receives another email that says, you really need to check on your lead. This is alert number 2. So it's kind of just like a reminder as well. So when we're looking at this, I'm going to show you, and I'm just going to say 5 days after the workflow criteria was triggered. But if I click on this drop-down menu, you're going to see a variety of different field options here. So the date fields will vary depending on the record type that you're working with. So since we're working with leads, you can see that I have the ability to configure this time trigger when the workflow criteria was triggered from that date, or when the lead was converted, created, updated, or if I have a date custom field under leads, I have this down here as well. So if I was working with tasks, these would be affiliated with task details, not leads. So let's go ahead and press save. So now that I've done this time trigger, I want to make sure to do one more action here, which is to send one additional email. And this email alert is going to say alert, for here I'm going to say user responsible notification number 2. It's going to be coming again from boss to the user responsible. This is going to say reminder, follow up with your lead, and then it's just going to say hi, friendly reminder, please follow up with, and then again putting in the information for the lead, and press save. So again, some of the other actions that we could do is actually have this lead record edited, so update this record. You can also add a new record. You can also add a task. So if we wanted to take a look at any of those actions, let's go ahead and do actions, and let's say update this record. What this is going to look like is if the lead status equal to not contact, I want to go ahead and update some other specific information about the lead. I can go ahead and select from a variety of different fields which one I needed to be updated. And then I would just save that criteria. So you can repeat these steps as many times as you'd like if you have different groups of criteria and actions that you actually wanted to set up. So if we jump back here for a moment, this is my list of different workflows that I have set up. So all of the actions triggered by workflows will be added to this queue here on the upper right-hand corner. And from the queue, you'd be able to see, you'd be able to view, filter, and cancel any pending time-triggered actions. So if you needed to delay or actually just cancel an email that's supposed to go out to someone, this is where you'd actually cut it off so that it's not sent. Likewise, because only admins have access to system settings, admins in turn are the only ones who can delete scheduled actions as well. So Insightly is actually going to automatically delete any pending actions that are scheduled for a couple of different reasons. So if a record is changed and it no longer meets the criteria of that workflow, of course it's going to go ahead and cancel the scheduled action. Likewise, if there's a record with pending workflow actions is deleted, then it's going to delete the actual workflow action that was triggered. So for example, if there was a time-triggered action that was pending here in this queue, but the lead was deleted, then the email notification that's supposed to go to the lead would also be deleted. Lastly is that workflow criteria, if it's changed and there's no longer a match for the records that are supposed to be triggering the action, then the workflow that is queued will also be deleted. So all of that information is available on our workflow automation help article, so that when you're getting familiar and getting up and running with these workflows, you can just do a quick double check to make sure that you understand thoroughly why certain workflows might get deleted. It's basically the criteria is not being met any longer. So let's go ahead and activate this workflow. I can actually do it from this page here. And let's see it in action. So I'm going to go into leads. I'm going to say new lead. And I'm going to say that this is Bill Smith. And he works at Crystal Springs, Inc. So if I go ahead and press save, notice that the lead status is not contacted, which is perfect. That's what it's going to trigger. And right now I am the user responsible. So I should go ahead and press save. We didn't do anything on the workflow about updating other records or creating new records, but I would also be able to see any updates. But let's go ahead and go to my email and see what this says. So I'm going to go ahead, do a quick refresh, and now here's that automated email based on that action that we just signed up together. So it's coming from Melissa. It's saying, alert, you have a new lead. If I click on it, it tells me, hi, a new lead has been assigned to you, Bill Smith at Crystal Springs, Inc. Please follow up with them. So if I had gone into Insightly, I would know exactly who to look at. So I'm going to filter by my open leads. I can see Bill. I'm going to go ahead and select his name here. So other scenarios that are really helpful when it comes to workflow automation is the ability for you to go ahead and utilize the updating of existing records. So what I've done here in system settings is I've actually created a workflow, and it's called subscription plan auto updates. So that if I have, let's say, a list of 3 custom fields, and I updated one of the custom fields, based on the option that I updated it to, it's actually going to update the other custom fields. So if I go into opportunities, and let's just go ahead and choose one down here at the bottom, I'm going to look at subscription plan, and I'm going to select basic, and then press enter. So what's going to happen here is when the record is refreshed, it should automatically enter information into this business level and price point custom fields. So you can see these 2 fields have been auto updated. So I can also configure that to work with, if I selected plus, maybe that would change the business level to medium business and 5,000 to 10,000. But that's a really cool use case of workflow automation, something that we're seeing is a big help to everyone. You're not necessarily having to manually make the updates. Likewise, if you had a specific, let's say, opportunity that was won, and you want an email triggered to your manager and also a project automatically created, you can go ahead and set that up here in System Settings as a workflow. So that is this second workflow scenario here. It's saying that when an opportunity is won, I want it to auto-convert to a project, and if we take a look at this workflow, I'm also sending an email to the manager so that he knows that that specific opportunity has been won. So there are tons of different scenarios where workflow automation can really be a time saver and huge value add for you and your team. Those are only a couple of different use cases right now, but there's definitely a lot more to come with workflow automation. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at, there we go, this defining slides here for us together. So now here's a quick recap about workflow automation. Again, it's only available right now for the professional and enterprise plans. Admins are the only ones to set up workflows and delete scheduled workflows, so those that were time triggered. Then we have that each workflow can contain multiple criteria and actions, so that's huge. The emails that are sent through workflow aren't counted towards your daily limit, only your record limit. You can create as many workflows as you'd like, so that should definitely be something that is exciting as well. And right now, workflow automation is only for internal updates. So workflow automation isn't going to trigger any external sources, but it's going to make the world of a difference in saving time with needing to do some manual entry into Insightly. Instead, all of that can be updated. All right, I also want to let you know that if you have workflow automation configured and you do make any updates with your mobile phone via our mobile app, you can definitely have those still processed exactly like the web app. All right, and lastly, I'll end on this slide. This is our online help center and community available at support.insightly.com. What you can do here is search for further information on workflow automation. There is tons of articles that we have to get everything up and running and some best practices and use cases as well. It'll define exactly what I just went through in today's webinar so that you can understand, even in further detail, a little bit more about workflow if you'd like. You can also post questions here. So other Insightly moderators or experts out there are answering these questions every single day to provide the help that you need. All right, thanks everybody for attending today's presentation. I'm thrilled that you were able to join. Have a great day.